Ever feel like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place? Like having to choose between filling your gas tank or buying groceries,
Yeah.
or maybe feeling that interest rate pinch on those student loans. Oof.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Well, according to Jeff Rubin and his book, A Map of the New Normal, those weren't just, flukes. They're a glimpse into a whole new world.
It's true. Rubin argues that the war in Ukraine, and more specifically the economic warfare surrounding it, has fundamentally reshaped our global system. This isn't just about temporary bumps in the road, he says. It's a whole new terrain.
The subtitle alone, How Inflation, War, and Sanctions Will Change Your World Forever, makes you stop and think.
What?
What's fascinating is how Rubin connects these massive global events to, our everyday lives.
Right.
Those little things.
Exactly, yeah. Rubin digs deep into how severing those complex global supply chains, the ones we never really thought about before, is a major driver of those price hikes we're all feeling.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Okay.
He uses the example of Europe's dependence on Russian gas.
Exactly. They thought they were being economically savvy, but when the war started, relying on Russia for such a vital resource backfired. And I mean spectacularly. It's a stark illustration of what happens when those intricate global connections are disrupted.
It's not just some abstract economic theory either. Rubin paints a vivid picture of this new reality. For instance, he talks about German families having to cut back on things like organic food and even their beloved red wine because of those skyrocketing energy prices.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it really hits home how these global shifts are impacting kitchen tables around the world.
And here's the real kicker. Rubin says this isn't a blip. It's like a total restructuring. He talks about friendshoring. Instead of, seeking out the absolute cheapest labor and materials, companies and countries are now prioritizing alliances over pure cost efficiency. Basically, they're saying we'd rather pay a bit more and know that we can rely on our suppliers when things get messy.
So basically, the days of grabbing a cheap t-shirt for $5 might be over. It makes you think, are we willing to pay more for ethically sourced products, knowing it might support a more stable world?
It's a trade-off we all might have to consider. And this brings us to Rubin's sobering conclusion. The era of cheap everything is over. We're all going to feel it. And for many, it's going to be felt right in their wallets. But hold on, because here's where things get interesting. This economic chaos actually creates some unexpected winners. The workers.
It's like, the saying, every cloud has a silver lining.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
While consumers are facing those higher prices we were just talking about, Rubin argues that workers are finding themselves in a position of power they haven't, experienced in decades. It's like this weird upside to all the economic turmoil.
Yeah, for sure. Rubin calls it the workers' strike back. And it's a fascinating dynamic. He argues that the big quit, where, millions walked away from their jobs, wasn't just a pandemic blip. It signifies a fundamental shift, especially among younger generations who are, no longer willing to settle for those dead-end, low-paying jobs.
It's like they're rewriting the rules of the game.
Right.
Rubin highlights examples of Starbucks, baristas, Amazon warehouse workers, even Google cafeteria staff, all unionizing and demanding, better treatment and fair wages, a whole new wave of labor activists.
Yeah, this ties directly back to inflation. With fewer people willing to work those low-paying jobs, employers are forced to compete for workers, driving up wages. But those higher labor costs, well, they inevitably get passed along to consumers, as you guessed it, even higher prices.
So it's this fascinating paradox, right? Inflation might be hitting consumers hard, but it's also given workers, leverage they haven't had in a long time. It makes you wonder, are we heading towards an economic system where workers just have more power?
It's certainly a question worth pondering, and Rubin doesn't stop there. He argues that even the mighty US dollar, the king of global currencies, is facing a serious challenge in this new world order.
Whoa. Okay, now that's a twist I didn't see coming. The idea of the dollar losing its top spot, that's mind-blowing. What makes Rubin think that could actually happen?
Well, he argues that when the U.S., froze Russian assets, essentially weaponizing finance, it sent, shockwaves through the global system. Other countries started thinking, wait a minute, if we hold our wealth in dollars and the U.S. can just freeze it on a whim, maybe that's not so safe after all.
So it's like they inadvertently undermine their own currency by trying to exert their power.
Yeah.
And Rubin points to the rise of the yuan, China's currency, as a potential contender.
Right. And don't forget the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they're actively pushing for alternatives to, the dollar-dominated system. We're talking about a potential, seismic shift in global finance. Imagine a world where the dollar is no longer the automatic currency for international trade.
It's like the tectonic plates of finance are shifting under our feet.
Yeah.
But what would that actually mean for, say, the average person?
Well, for starters, the U.S. might have a harder time borrowing money, which could lead to higher interest rates for everyone. That means more expensive mortgages, car loans, you name it. Rubin paints a pretty stark picture of the potential consequences.
So we've got soaring prices, workers flexing their muscles, and now the dollar's dominance is being challenged. It's a lot to take in. But Rubin doesn't just focus on economics. He argues that geopolitics are being reshaped in this new world order, right? It's like he connects the dots between everything going on.
Yeah.
He doesn't just talk about, economics in a vacuum.
Right.
He argues that we're seeing this whole realignment of global power.
Yeah.
With new alliances forming and old ones, being tested.
Absolutely. He says that, the old Cold War blocs are being replaced by a much more complex and unpredictable multipolar world where countries like China are stepping up to challenge the U.S.'s, long-standing dominance.
And China's not just talking the talk, are they?
Right.
Rubin highlights their role in brokering that recent peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Oh, yeah.
As a prime example of their growing influence.
Exactly. That was a major power move by China stepping in to mediate a conflict in a region where, the U.S. has traditionally held sway.
Wow.
It's a clear sign that the geopolitical landscape is shifting.
It's wild to think about how those two events, the peace deal and the war in Ukraine, are like connected. It really drives home Rubin's point that we're living in a different world now.
For sure.
With different rules and different players.
Yeah. And he doesn't shy away from, the potential dangers of this new world order.
Right.
He draws some alarming parallels between what's happening in Ukraine, Taiwan, and the Middle East.
Okay.
Suggesting that these, regional conflicts could easily escalate into something much, much larger.
He compares it to the Cold War, but with even higher stakes this time around.
Yeah.
Because there are more players with, nuclear weapons and more potential for miscalculation.
Right. And he argues that the U.S. needs to, adapt to this new reality instead of clinging to, the old ways of thinking.
Like they can still call all the shots.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Assuming they can just, dictate terms to the rest of the world.
It makes you wonder in this new world order, can anyone truly win?
Right.
Or are we all just trying to navigate the fallout
Yeah.
and avoid those worst case scenarios?
That's the big question Rubin leaves us with. And it's one that, each of us needs to grapple with because the answers will have, profound implications for all of us.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
Yeah.
A map of the new normal is a must-read for anyone who wants to understand the forces shaping our world today.
Yeah.
It's a bit unsettling at times, sure.
Yeah.
But also incredibly insightful and thought-provoking.
I couldn't agree more. Rubin, challenges us to see the world through a new lens and to rethink some of our most, deeply held assumptions about how things work.
So to all our listeners out there, if you're looking for a book that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the world, this is it.
Yeah.
Pick up a copy of A Map of the New Normal by Jeff Rubin. You won't regret it.
And be sure to, keep an open mind because the new normal is anything but predictable.
That's right. And as always, keep exploring.
It's your holiday.